Introducing the U3 water-resistant remote by RTI. My name is Vincent Bova, Director of Dealer Experience at RTI. Completely sealed and water-resistant, the U3 is the ideal solution for enjoying music, entertainment, and automation outdoors or indoors. The U3 has an IP66 rating, making it resistant to water, chlorine, dust, or fungus common in outdoor settings. In this webinar, we will discuss the unique features of the U3 and examine some of the case uses before we cover programming the U3 in Integration Designer Apex. Let's begin. Let's take a look at what's included with the U3 water-resistant remote. A handy reference guide should be used to get started and explains all the essential features of the U3. The U3 water-resistant remote with a sealed casing and comes in a white, blue, and gray trim. The U3 also includes two cradles. One cradle is designed for indoor charging. The other cradle does not include a charging feature and should be used to secure the U3 when not in use. A power supply for the charging cradle is also included with universal adapters. Special holsters are included that snap into the bottom of each cradle to allow wall mounting. The U3 durable design achieves an IP66 rating, allowing comfortable use in outdoor settings where elements are a factor. The U3 floats in water and is chlorine, fungus, and dust resistant. The U3 is RTI's first water-resistant remote that is completely sealed. The screen is designed for use in direct sunlight and is easy to see in any condition. The U3 was built with an EPD or electronic paper display screen. This technology makes the U3 screen easy to see even in extreme sunny conditions. Thanks to the benefits of EPD displays combined with other factors, the U3 can go without a charge for 2 to 3 months with normal use. Since the U3 is completely sealed, RTI designed a wireless syncing method using Zigbee technology. Dealers can plug in a ZB Pro and wirelessly sync the U3 in seconds. The U3 can be set to use 2.4 GHz Zigbee, which provides two-way feedback. The controller can also be set to communicate via 433 MHz one-way frequency. There is also a setting that lets you use 433 MHz for sending commands and Zigbee for receiving feedback. The U3 supports inductive charging and is compatible with Qi charging docks. All of these innovative features make the U3 a perfect fit in several applications in many different markets. Let's take a look at some of the programming features of the U3. Featuring 16 programmable hard buttons, the U3 may be programmed in Integration Designer Apex as well as ID9. The U3 is extremely simple to program, and dealers can deploy projects in just a few minutes. The U3 screen can be programmed to display up to 6 lines of text, text-based feedback, or feedback using graphs. These can reflect volume, bass, treble, and song progress. The U3 supports 1-bit non-grayscale bitmaps, which can be displayed when the controller enters power saving mode. Remember, RTI dealers, syncing the U3 in projects requires a ZB Pro, and it may be used for as many projects as needed. This wireless syncing process enabled our engineers to completely seal the U3 remote. The U3 can be used in a variety of projects in many different markets. Pools, patios, spas, bathrooms, kitchens, hotels, gyms and studios, bars and restaurants, yachts, cruises, recreational vehicles, or anywhere simplified control is required. Next, we'll examine how the U3 remote control is programmed in Integration Designer Apex. Let's start by opening Integration Designer Apex. Before we begin programming, I will describe the project. We will create a couple of rooms in our project and designate the U3 to the pool area. There we will enjoy music from our music streamer and have the ability to watch TiVo on our outdoor television. We will also enjoy specific music and sports channels over our audio distribution system. We will now create a new project file and begin programming the U3 for our client. Let's start by giving the client a control processor. Next, we'll add the rooms in our project. I'm going to add a pool area, a family room, a kitchen, and a bedroom. Since we're only going to be programming the pool area, I created the other rooms just for effect. Next, we're going to go to our controllers and designate the U3 to an area. Now, since the U3 is typically used in a single room solution and is not really a multi-room controller, we're going to add the U3 to the room that we're looking to control it in this case, the pool. I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to designate a home page on my pool remote. This will have a splash screen with the weather and time for the client, as well as a welcome page giving him directions on how to use the remote. Let's call the U3 Pool. Next, I'm going to start adding the source devices to our system, and I might skip around the tabs just to keep in order. I'm going to start by adding my music streamer to the system. In this case, the client is using a Sonos player, so I'm going to add a Sonos system. I'll pick player 1 and add that to the global area so it can be enjoyed by the whole house. I'm not going to set that as the room's audio source. The audio distribution amp is going to control the volume for this room, so I'm going to uncheck that. And of course, I'm going to create a page on the U3 by leaving this item checked, and I'll leave the name of the device as is, and I'm going to click Add Device. We've added our Sonos. Now let's add our TiVo. Now you can use just about any driver you want, a DirecTV or other types of drivers, or you could use an infrared device like a cable box or satellite receiver as well. It doesn't really make a difference. I'm picking a TiVo because it does give you feedback of the channel selection, which is kind of convenient on a U3 remote when you're outside. So I'm going to pick the TiVo, and I'm going to add that to the global area as well, since the TiVo is shared. And I'll leave the name intact while creating a page for the TiVo on our U3. And I'll click Add Device. Okay, next I'm going to go to the Page Sets area. Now, I want to have a different source on my remote for music channels that are accessing my TiVo, as well as sports channels. So I'm going to create blank sources for them so they appear on the U3 list of sources that the client can select. Now he's going to use the TiVo to watch TV, but he's going to use the music and sports channels to listen to that over the audio distribution system. So the TiVo and the sports and music channels work a little differently. So let's add a blank source to the global area, and let's call this blank source Music Channels. and I'll leave a page created and click Add Device. I'm going to do this all over again, but this time I'm going to create a source device for sports channels, and I'm going to repeat the process. So now I have 4 sources basically. I have a Sonos, a TiVo, a music channel source, which isn't designated to a specific IR load or driver library, and the same goes for the sports channels. Let's add other essential drivers to our system just to make the system look like a legitimate system. I'm going to go to my Drivers tab, and now I'm going to add the AD64 driver. Now I'm going to go and pick the zones, and I'm going to add the zones to each of the rooms that they correspond to. Let's make the pool zone 1, and I'm going to leave this checked as the room audio source because I want the client to be able to control the speakers that are outside when he's using any of the sources we just added. So let's add the zone 1. It doesn't matter if we check the page, it won't create anything anyway, but let's leave this unchecked just so we remember what to do. And click Add Device. Now I'm going to add to the existing driver which Apex conveniently sets up, and we can see zone 1 is gone because it's been designated to the pool. So let's add zone 2 to the family room. I'm going to uncheck this in the case that there's other source devices in there, and I'm going to uncheck the page as well, and I'm going to go and add zone 3 to the kitchen using the same technique as well as the bedroom. So I've added 4 zones from my audio distribution amp to each of the rooms. So each room is a different zone. Alright, I'm now ready to add another device. Let's go back to page sets and let's add a blank power off page set, we're going to add that to the pool area and create a power off activity tag or a power off page or both. So I'm going to add the power off, but I'm not going to create a page for it. I just want to use that tag to power off the system. I want it to jump to a home page. So I don't need a page link to the power off page. We don't need to confirm anything. So let's just add the power off without a page. And now I'm going to add back to the drivers a weather driver, because that's convenient in an outdoor remote. So I'm going to add that to the global area as well and create a page on the U3. Next, I'll add other important drivers like the clock driver. This will give us feedback on the time of day, which is another useful feature we can provide on the remote control. As far as devices, utility drivers, we're going to put in our XP diagnostic driver, which we should put on every system, just in case we need some troubleshooting. I'm also going to put in our counter driver, our debug counter driver, which will allow us to track the Zigbee signal, since we will be using Zigbee in this project. So we could designate that anywhere. We'll put it in the pool area, so the remote, and we might create a page for it, but we could always do that later. So let's click Add Device. Last, I'm going to put a special utility driver called Toggle Virtual Sources. And I'm going to explain to you what this driver does later in the webinar, but it will come in handy for our music and sports channels. So I'm just going to add that to the global area and click Next. No need to create a page, it's more of a utility driver, so we'll click Add Device. Now we've added all of our devices, and now we're ready for the next step. Let's close out of the Add Workspace item, and now starting from the beginning of the tree, we're going to go down and configure all the properties. So let's start with the XP3. Let's go into the properties area here, and let's preserve our flag states. Let's go to our clock area and adjust the time of wherever we are. I'll leave this central, as well as our location. Now, another interesting thing about this remote is that it can do different kinds of signals. So if you go to our General tab here, you can also enable the RM433 input or on the Sense 1 port if you're using a 433 with an XP3. Just something to know. Usually guys are going to be using heavier processors because of the fact you can locate that ZM24 anywhere you want, but since my test rack has an XP3, that's what I'm going to be using in my project. But just remember, if you are using 433, you do have to enable this check mark. So we've configured our processor properties. Let's move down to our drivers. So I'll configure one driver with you, and then I'll go and configure the rest on my own while I advance the film. So let's go and put in our 8064 driver properties. We're going to specify an 84X. We're going to control it with the serial port on our XP3. Number of sources in use. We're going to say we have 2 sources, and the source names are going to be Sonos and TiVo. We'll leave groups as is in case we want to use that. And the number of zones in our project is 4. And we're going to name these just like our rooms. Pool, family room, kitchen, and bedroom. Now for the rest of the properties, except for the toggle virtual sources driver, which I'm going to explain later, I'm going to go and configure all the properties for us while I pause the film. So I went ahead and programmed all of our driver properties. Now it's time to survey our system file just to make sure things are in order. Click the plus sign on top to expose all the menus. And let's take a look at our system project. So we have an XP3 processor. There are no controllers in the global area or multi-room controllers. Here are our drivers. Here are our source devices that are in the global area. So obviously source devices can be shared if they're in the global area. They can be seen on multiple remotes no matter where they are, whether they're in the global area or in individual rooms. Here's our pool area with a U3 pool remote under controllers. And here is our local source devices. So you can see those here. And you can see the rest of the rooms, like the family room and the kitchen. Nothing going on here except that they're part of the audio distribution system, and there's no local controllers in here. We could designate a controller later for them or program a global controller for those. Okay, so now in order to understand the U3 and how to program the U3, you have to understand how the U3 works mechanically. I'm going to pop up a picture of a U3 just so you can see and reference some of the functionality on the remote. Let's go over some of this functionality. First, on our screen, we're actually on a music page. Now the screen is designed to give you up to 6 lines of feedback. So you can have any kind of feedback you want, up to 6 lines. The bottom of the menu will always feature a little link here. Now if that link isn't connected, in other words, if it's open, that means you do not have a connection. So that's a convenient way of knowing if your remote's connected or not. Here's your battery limit. And again, you're going to have like 2 or 3 months on a battery charge. So it's not something you're going to worry about day to day, especially after a charge. You're going to see here that we have 16 buttons that we can program. Now you might say, I count 17. This source button is actually not a source button that can be programmed. It's actually a way to jump to a built-in menu in the U3. And the menu is going to feature our sources. And the sources are going to be named as our pages. Now it's important to know that you can have pages and pages of sources if you like, but try to keep things easy for the client, especially in an outdoor situation. They don't want to spend a lot of time on the remote. They just want to have fun. Now, every time they press this source selection button, no matter where they are, they're going to jump back to that selection. And they're going to be able to use the buttons out of the box, no programming required, to scroll through and select the sources. Now, the rest of the buttons can be programmed to do just about anything you want, and those are all just like any other remote in Apex. So again, the source button is not programmable. It's a built-in function on the U3 which will take the client to the source menu, allowing them to select a source. Now, the order of the sources and the display on that home selection screen, it's not a home page, it's a source selection screen, is going to depend on how we added the devices. In other words, Apex will put those devices in the order in which we created them. And since we really can't rearrange these in terms of how we added them to Apex, so plan your devices accordingly. Add them to Apex, at least the devices that you want to include on the U3, by specifying an order so you know how that works. Knowing that, let's go into the U3 properties. Let's click the U3 in the pool area and take a look at the properties just so we know what's going on here. First, we have a general tab. Now, the general tab will allow you to customize, not customize, but kind of configure options for the source menu. You can see here the number of devices per page on the source menu is set at 4. You could select this anywhere from 4 to 6 pages. Now, the U3 supports 3 different text sizes, so if you select 6, it'll use a lower text size, a lower size to fit everything in. So again, you have up to 4, you could have 4 or 6 lines. 4 will be the default. And that looks nicely on the screen. It's very legible and clear. And even on the sunniest days, the clients will be able to enjoy the remote outdoors. Okay, so that's the source menu under the General tab. Let's go to the output. Some different features here, some unique features that we haven't seen before in RTI's lineup. First, here's where we set the output mode. How is the remote communicating with the processor? Is it using Zigbee control and feedback? Or, here's a new option, is it using 433 control and Zigbee feedback? So if we're using a 433 antenna and we just want the antenna to field commands from the remote, we could actually specify, use the 433 for commands and control, and Zigbee solely for feedback. So, depending on your environment and the size of your backyard and your wiring constraints, that's a very convenient feature to have. You also have the ability for 433 control, which obviously isn't going to give you any feedback. So, really important features, some unique features here. So, it's just a great option. Flag names we're not going to touch, and there's a notes page as well. No need to go over that. Let's start looking at the source pages. So I'm going to click player 1. Now, if you look at a general source page, you're going to see the lines of text. You're going to see 6 no matter how many you specified on the properties, which I'm going to show you next. So you have these lines of text. You have all your hard buttons. Notice when I click on the source button, I have the ability to create a macro on it, but I don't have the ability to stop it from going back to the source page and giving the client a menu. So you can program all you want on these things. You can see here that our AD64 has already been programmed. Some tags here have already programmed Sonos Next and Previous. And since the button has a play and pause, and Sonos at this time doesn't have a play and pause function, you have to figure out how to program this logically. I'll show you a couple of ways to do that. Okay, now obviously on top is where you have the ability to customize text, feedback text, or graphs. Let's look at each one. So I can go here and I can edit the text here, and I could report back Sonos is selected, or anything I want. So that's text. You also have the ability to edit your text and specify a text tag. So I could say Sonos playing. And now I can program that tag here, down here, to give me text feedback of when my Sonos player is playing. So let's see, Sonos is playing, okay? And now I can edit that to say either Sonos is playing or Sonos stopped. So you have the ability to program text tags. Another approach is to just edit the variable here and just create any level variable you want. So if I create a source variable here, I just have to repeat the same process, creating a tag, a text tag, and programming it. So you can see this remote revolves a lot around text tags. So if you don't know text tags and how they work, there are some great videos and tech notes on how they work. They're really easy, and they work better than just entering control variables, which you can also do as well. So if you just wanted to stick a variable in here like Sonos, the same one, like Sonos play, and then click on this and change it, you could do it as well. Okay? So another thing you can do is you can program a graph. So I'm going to go to the graph here. Once you program the graph, you'll go to your variable and you'll create a level here. So let's create a source level, and let's call this Sonos volume, and click OK. Now we can go here and create a value, and we can say Sonos volume or bass treble. We'll go with the volume to match our tag, but you get the idea of what graphs are. Now another way to program a graph without jumping around is to just put in a select graph and then go and give this a name under your go and give it a name down here. So go and give it a name like Sonos volume, and then you can program your value here. So whichever you're comfortable with is fine. So you can see here that we can really report back some really great feedback. Now on this source icon, this is another interesting feature. The remote is a simple remote, doesn't have a ton of memory, so it's going to give you that 1-bit black or white bitmap. You can't use a grayscale or a button that has a little bit of color in it. It has to be either black or white. It has to be 1-bit. Those are really easy to create in any of the typical graphic editors. Just check out YouTube and how to create a 1-bit non-grayscale button. So we actually have some non-grayscale buttons. Let me just go to my options directory and find them. So I'm going to go and select my projects area. Let's see where I have this. My projects under my U3, and I'm going to pick my U3 bitmaps and click OK. And I'm going to go to my bitmaps here and wait for them to load in. And I'm going to look for my U3 bitmaps. So you can see that U3 bitmaps aren't going to, the 1-bit bitmaps aren't going to blow you away, but they do give you a cool little feature on your remote. Now, when are you going to see this icon for this source? Well, let's say the client is listening to Sonos and he's set to Sonos. Maybe he falls asleep or he leaves the remote untouched for about an hour or so. Based on a couple of conditions that are built inside the remote, including Zigbee communication, the remote will go to sleep and be in saver mode. Now, saver mode doesn't mean the remote won't communicate. As soon as you pick up that remote, it'll instantly connect to Zigbee. But the remote will rest and go to a sleep period and display the source icon for the client. So the client can just pick the remote out of the holster, it'll automatically wake up, and that will end that source icon viewability, and that's what he'll see. And he'll see the Sonos page again. So just a cool, cute little feature that you can use. Now, The top lines here are not used for control. You can't use these as buttons. They're just feedback on the remote. The buttons that you're using are down on this bottom area, okay? So again, you're going to go and program some of these buttons. So let's program a Sonos for real, the real way you program, knowing what we know now. So let me just go in here and delete all this text. I'll speed up the video and come back in a sec. Okay, so I cleaned out all these Sonos information. Now before we go into programming any of these sources, I want to make something clear. There's a lot of pages here on the U3. Now most of these we want on our U3, but there might be some you don't want on the U3. For example, you might have added a driver and it created a page. Does that mean it's going to show up in that source selection menu? Well, we actually have control of what gets added to that source selection menu. Let's take a look at the individual page options. So I'm going to just click on a page. I'll click on the Sonos page, and I could do it either here or in the actual source under pages. And I can click on edit page title. Now when I click on this, you're going to see some different functions here that apply to the U3 only. First, you can enter a new name for this page. Now keep in mind that this is the name that's going to appear in that Sonos menu. Now, Player One Sonos in brackets doesn't sound very user-friendly for the client. So let's make this something a little bit more simple, like Sonos. Now, another option is I can hide this page from the source list if I'd like to. So you'll go and do that for any pages that you created, whether accidentally or on purpose, that you just don't want to appear in the source list. For example, you might have created a weather driver just so you can stick some weather variables in some of the pages for your music streamers and other things, but you don't want to necessarily have a weather page. Then uncheck it, and then you can just use that for the variables and stuff like that. Or feedback, I should say. So you don't have to add pages just because you created the source or you created a page. And you get to control the name of the actual page itself or the source. So page style. Now for this, you're going to see 6 lines up there. And I can select any amount of lines I want. So if you have a source, maybe you don't have feedback. Maybe 2 lines you'd want to specify. And then you program. When I click OK, you would see the 2 lines of text. So this is good for cable boxes where you're not going to get feedback. Maybe put in a little text box here that says, Xfinity cable, press channel up, or whatever you want to do. So let's go back to that page tile and change this. On the devices that have a lot of feedback or have feedback, you probably want to have anywhere from 4 to 6 lines of text. You don't need to overwhelm the client with feedback. Just keep it useful so he kind of knows what he's watching or listening to. So I'll leave the 6 lines here, and I'm going to go and program my Sonos player. So let's start with the first one. I'm going to go and stick in some text tags here that are standard tags for Sonos. This way I don't have to program them. So let's start out with the NP artist. That's the now playing artist tag. And when I click OK, and I'll just center that. When I click OK, it already programs it for me. Okay. Next, I'll go to this one over here, and I'll program another text tag. Let's go NP title. The title that's playing. Oops, don't forget to do a text tag. Don't do regular text. Just do it. Make sure you click that little text tag, NP title. Click OK, center it if you'd like, and now you have a title. Okay? Then let's go and edit text, insert that text tag, and let's do NP album, now playing album. Okay? You'll see it populate with the information down here because it's a standard tag. Let's edit the text again. Now again, we can go and insert a variable if we want. The only problem is if we want to use the Sonos on other pages, it'll be more useful to use text tags. So I could go to the Sonos player here and I could say, let's do the Sonos station. Sonos now playing station, just to give you an idea of both. Alright, for the next one, let's program something a little different. I'm going to switch the text to a graph. Now I can put a feedback for a graph, like a level of something, like volume, bass, treble, maybe the song in progress. So let's go down now and click this button and give it a tag name. Let's call this, we'll call it pull volume. Now I can program a room level macro since the room volume is the same no matter what source we're on. So let's go to our value, select our AD64 driver, and let's pick the pull volume zone and click OK. Now that will feed back an actual graph volume level, like a slider without the ability to slide. For the last one, we're going to give the client an indication of what he's actually listening to. He might have multiple Sonos players, or he just wants to have an idea of what exactly he's listening to. So I'm just going to program some normal text in here that says Sonos, or Sonos Pull, or whatever you'd like. Okay, now we've programmed all of our feedback on top. Now it's time to work on the buttons on the bottom. Let's look at the source button first. Now, as I discussed earlier, what the source button will do is simply change, no matter where you press it on the remote, it will always change to the source selection menu. So, that said, why would we have the ability to program this? Well, think about how the remote works. When you go to the source selection menu, and I'll just pull up the remote real quick, when you press the source button on the remote, this screen will jump to the source selection menu. At that point, you can use the up and down buttons and the OK button to scroll through and select the source you'd like. Once you select a source, it'll fire a macro. Now, we don't have to program the source selection menu, nor do we have to program the up and down or OK functionality. But we do have to program the macro that's going to fire. And that's where it's going to do it, on the source button. That's where we're going to program it. So let's bring a tag in, and let's change this. Let's bring in a tag for the Activity 1 Sonos player. Now we can program a room level, and you have the option to program different levels. Program a room level macro here that's going to go to the AD64 driver. So let's close some of this out and set up the AD64 driver. We can use a simple source select pull Sonos, and that will turn on the Sonos, turn on the zone for the Sonos in the pull area. So now that source selection menu knows what to do when the client presses that button for at least Sonos. Okay, for the power button, we could do a couple of things here. We could reserve this for the actual power for the specific source, or we could go and drag a tag in for activity power off. Now I don't want to keep doing that for every source. So if you right click, you can say add tag to all pages. And now every page on the remote that has a page will have that power off activity tag there. So it's a simple way of programming that tag on multiple source devices. So let's program this with a room macro. Since everything is going to do the same thing, it's going to shut off the pool area and do whatever else it needs to do. I'll stick in a comment for the television. Turn off TV also. We didn't add a TV, but a little comment there would be fine. So you kind of get the idea there. Now, the volume button's already programmed for us. We don't need the directional buttons. The menu button is useless. That leaves us with the play and pause, since the forward and previous is programmed. Now with the play pause, you have a couple of different options. I'm going to show you a couple, and there are other options also. First, I can go to this program a source level macro here, and I'm going to use a system variable test to ask the Sonos if it's playing. So if the Sonos in the pool area is play, meaning it's playing, I'm going to send a couple of commands here to stop to toggle between the play and the pause. So if the Sonos is playing, what do we want it to do? Well, we want the Sonos to pause if it's playing. So we're going to go to our transport functions, and use a pause command. So if the Sonos is playing, pause it. Otherwise, let's copy this command down here. Let's play. Now, even if the Sonos is in a stop position, we're just looking for the play variable. So if it's not playing and it's in any other state, it will play. Otherwise, it will pause. So we just created a play pause button. Now, sometimes you don't have the luxury of two-way feedback and devices that can communicate that way. So I'll show you another way to do this. You can use the toggle IR code command that's available in the macro list. And what we're going to do here is toggle between play and pause. Just bring this up in the bracket. You do need to specify what the button does first, so we'll make it play first and we'll make it pause second. Now, in case the client gets off track with this, it's not a big deal. He can press the button twice and he'll get right back on track. But you kind of get the idea how to use this. And we use a play pause button because it simplifies the remote even more. That's the remote was originally designed for. That leaves us with the channel up and down. Now, the Sonos has favorites and favorite presets we can save, but there's no way to actually scroll through those favorites. So, we can use the toggle source driver, which I'll explain later, to do that, since the Sonos doesn't have a favorite next or a favorite previous. So we'll show you how to program that soon. So this is all programmed. This is all ready to go. This device is ready. Let's move on to the TiVo. Now, I like to get into the habit of going to the tag function when we get to a source and dragging and dropping it to the source button. It's the only thing we really have to do. Now, for the bitmap, let's give it a TV function. That's fine. This was more than fine. Now, the client is not going to need to do a lot with the TiVo, and I always recommend giving him the least amount of feedback he needs in order to be happy. Just give him what he needs so the remote's not overwhelming. You don't want to bombard him with a lot of feedback. He just wants to know what channel he's watching and what source he's watching, or listening to. So let's go down to the TiVo properties before we begin. Edit the page title. Let's give this a name that makes better sense. So let's just call this TiVo. We don't want to hide this page from the source list. Now keep in mind, the client's going to be able to watch TiVo on his outdoor TV, but he's also going to be able to listen to music channels and sports channels on his TiVo without watching, just listening. So two different activity types. But those music and sports sources we created actually belong to the TiVo. So with the TiVo, let's cut down the number of lines we have. We don't need to program much. Let's just make it 3 and click OK. So for the first one, let's go and just put text in. Let's just make him know what he's watching, TiVo. For the second line, let's go and edit text here, and we can either insert a text tag or a control variable that shows the channel number. So we can go major channel. Now we can see what channel number he's on. We could also go for the text and make that a graph, and now we could go down here and program that pool volume tag. And that'll make sure, since it's a room level macro, that it populates for that. Okay, so now that we've programmed, oh, why didn't this stick? Let me just make sure this sticks. Pool volume. There we go. Let's hit the back button. So that now will populate. Now for the TiVo, he's going to have regular channel up functionality, and that's fine from when he's watching TV. The volume's all programmed. The play and pause isn't programmed. So if he's using the DVR, you'll go and program that. So with the source now, let's program this for the TiVo. Let's go and click the room level. Let's go and turn on the TV. I don't have the TV added, so let's just make a little comment. Turn on TV in place of the TV command. And now let's change the AD64 to the TiVo. Whoops, wrong one. Source select. The pool to the TiVo. So now we can listen to his TiVo over the audio distribution system while he's watching television. And that's just so he can watch TV from the pool and hear it at a volume level without blasting the TV for everyone that's next to it. So that's the TiVo. Really simple. We just programmed this real quickly. Nothing really much to do here. The power off's already programmed for us because we copied that tag to every page and programmed the room level macro. And so now we're ready to move on to the music channels. Now, for the music channel, this is technically a TiVo source, but since we added the page set, it doesn't have any commands backing it. So we're going to have to program those commands. So let's go and drag the tag over for the music channels first, like we always should do. And now for this, we're going to do the same exact exercise as the TiVo. We're going to edit the page title, and we're going to make this called music. We'll just call this music in the scroll menu. That's fine. And we only need 3 lines, just like the TiVo. And we're going to basically do exactly what we did for the TiVo. We're going to say TiVo music, or whatever you want to call it. You're going to go to your edit text here, and you're going to specify that TiVo channel number, whether you use a text tag or insert a control variable. Okay. Oh, that didn't stick. Sorry. I picked the wrong one. Sorry about that. TiVo major channel. Okay. And then for the volume, let's give him a volume level so he always knows what the volume is. And let's go to let's go and give this make sure this is selected when you do this. Let's go and program the pool volume tag here, and that should fill in with the pool volume because we programmed it earlier. Alright, as far as bitmaps go, I think I have something here. Let's give them a soccer ball. And we could program this source level here to go to the TiVo. So it won't turn on the TV, but it will turn on the music distribution system. So a source select will turn on the system. We'll select TiVo. And of course, we're going to want to program all these buttons like the play and advance and all that if it matters. You probably want to give him an exit over here with the TiVo live TV, just in case he's stuck in the DVR. So program a little live TV function here, just in case he's stuck in a DVR. Otherwise, he won't be able to get out easily. All right, now that leaves us with a little bit of an issue because the channel numbers. The channel numbers, if we just give him channel up and down, how is he going to scroll through just his music channels? Even if they're in a specific bank of channels, and even if we create a macro to jump to that first channel in the bank, it's still not going to be as convenient as we like. So what we can use is something called the toggle virtual sources driver. Now there's other ways to do this. People can do this with flags. There's other drivers that are out there that could probably do the trick as well. But I just picked the toggle virtual sources driver, and I'm going to show you how to use it for this function. Since this remote does not have the ability to select presets directly, and since channel up and down is just going to go through every channel, how do we give the client access to just the music channel, sports and music channels? Well, let's go now to the actually I'm on music here, so let's give them a music icon. So let's go now and let me just change this. This is fine. Okay. Let's go now to the toggle virtual sources driver and take a look at it. Now the toggle virtual sources driver is a driver that allows you to specify 24 groups and put 24 items in each group. So let's take a look at how this is going to work. Each group is going to have a name. So let's give each group a name. Call the first group music channels. We'll call the second group sports channels. And then we can't forget about that Sonos favorites. So let's do Sonos favorites. So now that you have a name of a group, you could specify as many group items in the group. So items are going to be channel numbers. So you get 24 channel numbers in each group. I'm only going to use, let's just use 3 because we kind of get the idea. If you could program 1, you can program 24. And we'll just put 3 in those things so we don't have to worry too much about them. Now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to program names for these channels. So we'll just have to program 3 of them. So the music channel 1 would be jazz. The second one would be rock. And the third one would be some classical music. And as far as the sports channels go, the first one would be ESPN. We can do NBC Sports. And we can do something like Fox Sports Network or something like that. Okay, and then for the Sonos, you would put in the names of the Sonos that you want to go through. Now remember, these don't have to be in any kind of order. You could specify whatever order you want. So let's call this Billy Joel. Let's call this Coldplay. Let's call this U2. Okay, and you get 24 channels that you can specify. Okay, so once you have the channels, the idea is when the channel is selected, it's going to fire an event, and he's going to use the channel up and down to go through these channels. So let's turn on the wraparound command. What the wraparound command will do is that when you're channeling up and you hit channel 3, channel up again will wrap around the channel 1 and so on and so forth. So let's use the wraparound feature. That will make a lot of sense for this. And now for driver events, this is where you fire events for the driver. So when item 1 is selected, what do you want it to do for group 1? Well, I want it to go and fire off that music channel for that TiVo. So let's go now to the direct tuning on the TiVo and specify a channel number. I'll do 210 for the first one, and we'll just copy this. For the second one, we'll do 310, and for the third one, we'll do something like 97. Now, there's also an item unselected. We're going to leave that blank. We're not going to use that feature here. Okay? Now, with the driver events, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have the ability to channel up again and go through these and then wrap around and go through them again. Let's specify group 2 events as well. So group 2 is the sports channels. So let's pop in a sports channel. First one is going to be Yes Network. That's 750 or whatever you want to do, 750. The second one's going to be whatever, ESPN or whatever you're doing. And then the third one is going to be whatever it is. But we know the channel number. Now for the Sonos, it's going to be a little different. We're going to use the Sonos driver. So for item 1, we have 2 choices with the Sonos. Let's open up the Sonos commands and take a look. I'm going to close up all these drivers so you can have a better idea of what we're selecting. So on the Sonos driver, I'm going to select the favorites section. So you have 2 choices. You could either select a preset favorite for your Sonos. Those are the favorites that you actually program off that big list of favorites. Or you could select a favorite from that list itself, just your regular favorites. You can go to 1 through as many favorites as you have in the list. So I'm just going to specify the first, which is just a little easier to do. And these could skip around. You don't have to go in any order. So 8, let's say 2, and we'll pick 5 here. So you kind of get the idea how this is going to start working. All right. Now, again, you set the driver properties to you set the group for each group you're using, and then you set the number, the items in the group itself. Timeout is something that applies when you use the wraparound, because when you press a channel up, you want to give the system time to kind of collect itself and get everything organized and feedback and everything. So 2 seconds is the limit that is set by default for how long you can channel up and then move to the next one. So if the client goes channel up, channel up, channel up, it's only going to fire 1 if he does it within 2 seconds. So just guide your client. You don't want him to go too crazy with the channel ups. You just want him to kind of scroll through it the way you would with a seek on a radio. That's how it works better. Okay? Alright, so let's go to our Sonos and our TiVo and music channels and activate this. So now with our Sonos channel up, let's go to our source level and let's go to our toggle virtual sources. And now let's go group 1 selection, group 3, which is the Sonos selection up. And then for channel down, let's do group 3 selection down. And that will channel through those 3 favorites. Now you could have 24. So that's a lot for the client to channel up and down through, but at least he'll be able to do it and see the feedback on the screen. That's why the station name is always so important, and you could even include the favorite number or the favorite name or whatever you want to do as well. Alright, for the music channels, let's do that. Again, it's simple. For the music, source, toggle sources, and that was group 1. So group 1 selection up, group 1 selection down. Just as simple as that. We're going to do the same thing for our sports channel. That's going to be group 2 selection up on the channel up. Oops. Group 2 selection up, and channel down is group 2 selection down. Now again, there's other ways to use this driver. You can use flags, to use this function. You can use flags, you can use ways to kind of track what's playing with system variables. There's lots of ways you can do it. I find this to be pretty easy. So if you find an easier way, just let us know. Now, of course, for the music channels, we're gonna have to drag the tags over just like the sports channel, and we'll go and do that while we advance the video. Okay, we went ahead and programmed our sports page with our sports channel selection, and we're all done there. Now the only thing left to do now is to look at that home page we created, because if we click on the U3 in the pool, we do see that there's more than 4 sources. Now for the weather, we don't want the weather to show up in the list. We just want to use a couple of variables from it. So let's hide this page. On our home page now, we don't want to create a home page activity. So let's drag this tag over to the home page anyway. So for the home page, let's click and edit this page title. We don't want this to appear in the source list, but we may want to jump to this. And let's jump to this after we power off the system to give the client a kind of introduction page. So I'm going to go and check this off, and we'll leave it the name home, and that's fine. And then we'll click OK. And let's play this as we go. So we'll select the page style last. Now on the Sonos, let's give it a graphic. On the home page, let's give it a graphic. And now let's program some information in here. Maybe we want to go in here. Let's insert a text tag and do temperature. Let's give the client some useful feedback. Let's center this. And let's make a space, and we can do Alt 0176, which will insert a degree symbol. And now let's program this. So we'll go to our text, click our weather, we'll click temperature. And we could do a variety of temperature conditions if they make sense. Maybe you want to do the forecast for the client as well. Again, you can insert a control variable, or you can simply go and insert a text tag, whatever you'd like to do. Let's do the current condition, or let's do the current condition text. Where is that? Here we go. Condition text. Chance of a thunderstorm. Not a great pool day. That's just a placeholder, obviously. Okay, and then we could also do the time. So let's go to the edit text here, and let's go and put the time in. We use the clock driver, and we'll say time. It's the current time. Feedback there. That's useful to have. We could do other stuff as well. You give the client direction, of course, the volume, whatever you want to do. Obviously, the system is going to be off when he gets to this page, so volume feedback probably doesn't make sense. You could also do something like press source, oops, and then to begin, with just some regular text, just to give him some direction on how to use this. And then you can reserve the last one for something like maybe the activity name, like, or the Sonos status. So we could give him a little tag here called, let's say, Sonos status. And then we can program something on there that will track if the Sonos is playing or not. Sonos. Let's go down to our Sonos. Sonos play. We could change this to say Sonos playing, or we could say nothing if it's not playing. Now that'll feedback Sonos playing if it's playing, and then it'll feedback. This way the client knows when he shut his system off if the Sonos for some reason is still playing or something like that. So any kind of information that you find useful is fine. The only thing to remember is make sure you go to your power off tag and make it the page link jump to instead of the power off page, which there really isn't any. Make sure it jumps to the pool homepage. Now when the client powers off the system, this is what he'll see. So really, that's pretty much it. We've created drivers and we've suppressed them from being seen on the source selection menu. And we've created a bunch of activities the client can use in an outdoor environment where, overseeing a remote or having to deal with an iPhone or an iPad is just too much of a hassle. Plus, the elements can always get to it. Even if it's waterproof, you don't want to soak your iPhone in chlorine and everything like that. The U3 will handle that. Okay, last step, sending your device or project file to the processor. Very simple to do. Let's go to the Communications tab and click Send to Device. Now for this process, you're going to need a ZB Pro device. A ZB Pro is a very important tool to any RTI installer. Not only will it allow you to create Zigbee repeater networks, but it will also let you sync as many U3 remotes you want. So make sure each installer has a ZB Pro if they're installing the U3 remote. Send your system file over to the processor first. It should only take a couple of seconds if the U3 is the only controller in your system, as there's really not a lot of information on there. Now when you're ready to send over your U3, make sure your Zigbee Pro or ZB Pro is plugged in into the USB port on your PC. I want you to press and hold the source button on the U3 remote for about 5 to 10 seconds until a control panel menu will come up. On the control panel, there'll be a way to enter programming mode, power down the remote, or exit the control panel. Select programming mode. It's going to give you a code. In this case, it's giving me a code of 5565 on the remote face. When I click send, it's going to ask me for that code. So I'll enter 5565 and click continue. At that point, it's going to connect to the U3 and download the communication or download the project file to the U3 remote. The process should only take a couple of seconds, and once it's finished, it'll update the remote if it needs to. Okay, once it's done, click close, and once your U3 returns, it'll have that familiar source selection menu up. All your client has to do is select a source and he's ready to go. That's all there is to programming a U3. It's a real simple exercise, and it'll give you a lot of, you'll be able to deploy a lot of systems pretty quickly. So that's all we have today. Thanks for attending the webinar on programming the U3. I hope you enjoyed the remote and I hope you use it well. Thank you so much.